Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. I'm Kirti Sophia Ponachan, and in today's session, we'll be continuing the chapter Toba Takes Singh by Saadat Hassan Manto, and this is the fourth part. Moving on to the chapter. He had been able to sense the impending visits of his relatives. Impending means about to happen. But now it seemed the little voice in his heart that had told him they were coming was stilled. He longed for his visitors who had been sympathetic and had brought him gifts of fruit, sweets, and clothing. He was convinced they would be able to tell him if Toba Tek Singh was in Pakistan or in India, his conviction stemming from his belief that his family came from Toba Tek Singh. Conviction means opinion. In the lunatic asylum, there was a man who believed that he was God. Bishan Singh asked him about Toba Tek Singh. The man laughed raucously. "It is neither in Pakistan nor in Hindustan," he said, "because I haven't given any orders yet." Bishan Singh pleaded with this god to give the orders so that the question of Toba Tek Singh could be settled once and for all. The man said that he was too busy, that there were too many other orders to be taken care of. Finally, Bishan Singh lost his temper. "Upar di gurguddi bai daniya di, moong di dal di of Wahai Guruji, the Khalsa, and Wahai Guruji, the Fateh." He probably wanted to say that if the man had been a Sikh god instead of a Muslim god, he might have helped Bishan Singh. A few days prior to the transfer, Bishan Singh was visited by an old Muslim friend. Seeing him, Bishan Singh turned to leave. The guard restrained him. "He's come to see you," the guard said. "This is your friend, Fasal Din." Bishan Singh glanced at his friend briefly, then began muttering his customary nonsense. Fasal Din came forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I wanted to come and see you earlier. I've just been so busy. Your family has left for Hindustan, and everyone is fine. I helped them in whatever way I could. Your daughter, Roop Kaur." He paused in mid-sentence. "Roop Kaur?" Bishan Singh looked thoughtful. "Yes, she's fine too," Fasal Din said haltingly. Haltingly means to stop abruptly. "She also left with the others." Bishan Singh remained silent. So in this part, we could see that Bishan Singh usually got visitors who came to see him, and the visitors were his relatives. And before they come, Bishan Singh usually have an intuition regarding their arrival, and he shares that with the guards. Once the disturbance between Pakistan and Hindustan began, the visitors who came to see Bishan Singh stopped their visiting altogether. In the past, he knew by some impulse when the visit would come, but even that inner voice of Bishan Singh has stopped right now. He wanted the visitors because they usually brought him gifts of fruit, sweets, and clothing, and he was convinced that they would be able to tell where Toba Tek Singh was, whether he was in India or in Pakistan. There was another man in the asylum who thought he was God, and Bishan Singh came to that person and asked him about Toba Tek Singh. The man laughed and said it was neither in India. It was means that person is neither in India nor in Pakistan because he had not issued any orders yet from God. Bishan Singh requested him to give the orders, but the man said he was too busy because there were so many orders he had to give. Finally, Bishan Singh lost his temper. He said something in a strange language. Usually, he utters some gibberish like that. He said something. Probably it meant that if the man had been a Sikh god and not a Muslim god, he might have helped Bishan Singh. A few days prior to the transfer of Bishan Singh, an old Muslim friend visited him, and his name was Fasal Din. Bishan Singh was not at all happy to see Fasal Din, and he was about to leave, but the guard stopped him and told that Fasal Din was an old friend of Bishan Singh and he had come to visit Bishan Singh. Bishan Singh said his customary nonsense sentence to Fasal Din. Fasal Din came forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. He said to Bishan Singh that his family had left for Hindustan. He had helped them in all possible ways. He also said that Bishan Singh's daughter Roop Kaur also had left for Hindustan. Bishan Singh remained silent after hearing what Fasal Din said. Let's move on to the chapter. They requested me to check on you every once in a while, Fasal Din continued. Now I hear you are being taken to Hindustan. Give my regards to Bhai Balbir Singh and Bhai Wadwa Singh and sister Amrit Kaur. Tell Bhai Balbir I am all right. One of the two cows he left behind has calved and had two calves. One died 6 days after the birth. And if there's anything more I can do, tell them I am ready any time. And here I brought you some sweets. Taking the bag of sweets from him, Bishan Singh handed it to the guard who was standing nearby. Where is Toba Tek Singh? He then asked Fasal Din. Where is Toba Tek Singh? Fasal Din repeated in amazement, adding, where it was before. Is it in Pakistan or in Hindustan? Bishan Singh asked. In Hindustan. Well, no, in Pakistan, I think. Fasal Din became flustered. Flustered means confused. Bishan Singh was muttering again. Upar di, Gurgur di, Annex di, Bai Dania di Mung Dal di of Pakistan and Hindustan of Di Dur Fitai Moon. And with that he walked away. In this part, we could see that Fasal Din further said to Bishan Singh that his relatives had asked him to come and see him very often. He has heard that Bishan Singh will soon be taken to Hindustan, and he asked Bishan Singh to convey his friendly greetings to Balbir Singh, Bhai Balbir Singh, Wadwa Singh, sister Amrit Kaur, and all. Fasal Din also gives Bishan Singh some sweets. Bishan Singh took the bag of sweets and hands it over to the guards. He then turns to Fasal Din and asks him where was Toba Tek Singh. Fasal Din wanted to know where it was before. Bishan asked again if it was in Pakistan or Hindustan right now. Fasal Din first said that it was in Hindustan and then he said that it was in Pakistan. He himself was utterly confused. By hearing this, Bishan Singh repeated his mad sentence and just walked away to the asylum, to the other room. So that's all for today. I hope today's session was fruitful for you all. We'll continue in the next session. Thank you so much.